Chapter 24:13. The Coming of Catastrophe. Chapter 24:13. The Coming of Catastrophe. Blind Chen did not move. He stood there, still leaning on the cane in his hand. Chenyi didn't move either. He merely raised his head to look at Lin Shi, who had taken a few steps forward, stopping right on the edge of the old house. Close behind her in the sky above were cultivators from the Lin family, who were extraordinarily talented. Yi Futian and the others stopped as well as they directed their attention forward. In this suppressed space, the sword will seem to escape into the invisible, hovering above Blind Chen and the others. Everyone's attention was on Blind Chen and Lin Shi. They wondered if she would actually do something. If Lin Shi were to make a move, what would be the outcome? No one knew if the outcome predicted by Blind Chen was technically a prophecy or not. Lin Kong was watching as well. Up until this moment, he hadn't stopped Lin Shi. However, the aura of the Great Path permeated from his body as his divine consciousness covered this area. He believed he could take action in a single moment. For cultivators at their level, this space was far too narrow, and they could easily cover it in a single thought, attacking from any direction, ultimately razing this entire area to the ground. Then try it, Lin Shi spat. His voice still held an incredible sense of cold arrogance. The moment her voice fell, an invisible sword will direct it towards Blind Chen. This invisible sword will seem to meander in the void, which could not be detected by the naked eye. Nevertheless, the existence of the sword will was real enough. Finally, Lin Shi made her move. She was no longer able to resist the temptation of giving it a shot. Even though the man in front of her was the mysterious Blind Chen, she still had her disbelief. Today, she wanted to find out, once and for all, if this blind man had been deceiving everyone all along. But the moment she acted, Lin Shi saw a ray of light. The light was extremely dazzling. It bloomed right next to Blind Chen, stinging everyone's eyes. At this moment, she could not open her eyes, so she closed them tightly. She felt the whole world had turned into a world of light, which submerged everything in this space. She could not see anything except the light. Time seemed to slow down at this moment, and Lin Shi suddenly felt the breath of death. In this instant, countless thoughts burst into her mind, and there was shouting. "Get back," the voice said. She heard it, but there was no time to react at all. In Lin Shi's world, there was only the light. The light occupied her entire world and swallowed up everything, including her body and her spiritual soul. At this moment, she realized that she had lost after all. Blind Chen's prophecy had been fulfilled. Lin Shi's body disintegrated under the light, turning into countless dots of light in an instant. It was as if she had never existed. Not only were the cultivators behind her unable to save her in time, but they simply had no way of saving her either. In that instant, the light also invaded their worlds and occupied everything. When they could finally see the world outside clearly, Lin Shi's body had already turned into numerous spots of light, dissipating in front of their eyes. A figure appeared where Lin Shi was. It was Lin Kong. He stretched out his hand, trying to grasp something, but that spot of light evaporated in his palm, escaping his grasp. He had thought that he would be able to respond no matter what happened. But what had happened was so ruthless. No matter how fast the reaction, it could never be faster than the power of light. Under the light, Lin Shi was wiped out as if she had always been dust and smoke. How could he have stopped it? At such a close range, the light was shining upon them in an instant, and he was too slow. All he could do was watching his descendant disappear right before his eyes. As a matter of fact, just as Blind Chen had prophesied, it was the catastrophe of death. The power of light. The hearts of all the cultivators trembled. They all looked at the man who released the light. It was not the blind man, but the young man next to him. This young man's appearance was not the most outstanding, but at this moment, there was a light shining upon his body. It was extremely dazzling. Chenyi, the young man raised by Blind Chen many years ago, had now returned. He had the body of light, and his cultivation was tyrannical. This was the aura of a Ren Huang in the 8th realm, which was just a step away from the peak of Ren Huang. Those cultivators from the Lin family who had clashed him in the ruins felt extremely apprehensive at the moment. Had they engaged with him in a fight then, they probably would have perished already. But at this moment, He had killed Lin Shi. Does the clan leader of the Lin family believe in the prophecy I foretold? Blind Chen said as Lin Kong turned to look at him. Prophecy? Did he consider this a prophecy? Of course it was. He predicted events that had not yet happened, but the young man next to him determined whether this prediction would become a reality. In fact, Lin Shi and the cultivators from the Lin family had always had a choice. Lin Kong could have stopped Lin Shi in time, or Lin Shi could have left instead of making her move. Then would his prediction have failed? But there were no ifs now. The fact remained that his prediction had come true, and Lin Shi was dead. Lin Kong stared at Chen Yi, holding back the grief and anger in his heart. At this moment, he could still maintain his sanity without taking direct action, demonstrating his tremendous self-control. The elder's reputation is well-deserved. Even your disciple is outstanding. A Run Huang of the 8th realm at such young age, said Lin Kong. Not only did he not retaliate, but he kept his composure enough to give a compliment. Of course, the reason why he didn't retaliate was because of fear. A young man taught by Blind Chen had become a Run Huang in the 8th realm. So what about Blind Chen himself? Was he really just a crippled old man? What if Blind Chen's cultivation was higher than his? If he made a move, the outcome would probably be no different than Lin Shi's, so he dared not act recklessly. He is not my disciple, Blind Chen replied. Whether or not he is a disciple of yours, he must have gotten this power of light from you, elder. Lin Kong probed tentatively. What are you doing? Continuing to step on my roof. Blind Chen did not answer him, but commented lightly. Lin Kong was silent. He looked in front and saw Blind Chen walking towards the old house with a cane, working his way towards him. The aura of the great path from Lin Kong enveloped this space, which was extremely oppressive, to say the least. However, Blind Chen seemed to have not perceived it, still moving forward slowly, approaching the old house with each step. In the meantime, Chen Yi's attention was focused solely on Lin Kong, who was above the old house. As for the cultivators who were here, besides being shocked by Chen Yi's strength, they were more curious about the identity of Yi Futian and those in his party. Chen Yi was raised by an old blind man, and he had returned to the great bright city many years later with spectacular strength. But who were Yi Futian and the others? Yi Futian and the others were the only distinguished guests who had compelled the old blind man to come out of that old house of his and welcome them in person. Were they invited by Chen Yi? If so, what realm was their cultivation level? And how were they related to the Temple of Light? These were all burning questions to them. But Blind Chen probably wouldn't give them any answers like they wanted. The light was still on Chen Yi, shooting out in the direction where Lin Kong was. Lin Kong could make his move in a single turning of the mind, and Chen Yi could do the same. In such a short distance, once the battle broke out, no one could predict what would happen. Previously, Lin Shi insisted on doing what she wanted to do, and it had killed her. As for Lin Kong, the clan leader of the Lin family, what would he do? In the area around the old house, everyone's eyes were fastened on Lin Kong. If he did not back off, what would happen? The sounds of the cane hitting the floor could be heard loud and clear. Blind Chen was getting closer to the old house. Lin Kong's focus was always ahead. Finally he said, "Let's go." When his voice faded, Lin Kong levitated into the sky, taking the cultivators of the Lin family away through the air. After they left, Blind Chen stepped into the old house, and the door closed. Yi Futian and the others disappeared. But no one left, as they were still standing quietly in the distance. Lin Shi was killed, and Lin Kong, the head of the Lin family, would not drop the matter so readily. Chapter 24:14. The person behind the scene. Chapter 24:14. The person behind the scene. Yi Futian followed Blind Chen to the old house, which was simple, clean, and quite spacious. Blind Chen pointed at a chair with his cane and said to Yi Futian, "Sit down, young friend." "Sir, you first, please." Yi Futian gestured with his hand as the group took their seats in order. Yi Futian was full of questions at the moment as he glanced at Chen Yi. Chen Yi was standing silently behind Blind Chen. He was obviously very reverent towards the blind man. "Sir, there are some things that I don't understand," Yi Futian started. "My friend, you don't need to say anything more, I know." Blind Chen nodded slightly, and Yi Futian did not pursue further, waiting for Blind Chen to continue. I've invited you here because I have a favor to ask you, my young friend, Blind Chen said to Yi Futian. What favor? Yi Futian asked. To help me open the relic of light left by the Temple of Light, said Blind Chen. Yi Futian couldn't suppress his surprise, so he asked, Sir, I just got here for the first time, and didn't know anything about the existence of the relic of light. Even if it really exists, why do you think that I can open it? When Blind Chen heard this, he just smiled. The inheritances from Ziwei the Great, Shinin the Great, and Shenjia the Great Emperor. Are there any relics in this world that my little friend cannot open? My friend has no reason to be so humble. How do you know? Yi Futian looked doubtful as he glanced at Chen Yi. However, Chen Yi shook his head. I didn't say anything. Yi Futian was more puzzled than ever. Blind Chen must have been in the Great Bright Domain all this time. If so, how could he possibly know what took place in the original realm? According to what he heard from those outsiders, Blind Chen had never even walked out of this house very often, and rarely communicated with the others. How could he know what happened in the original realm? How do I know is not as important. What is important is that I have been waiting for you, my young friend, for more than 20 years. Blind Chen's words confused Yi Futian even more. He had been waiting for him for more than 2 decades. Are you a prophet, sir? Yi Futian asked. This seemed to be the only possibility. Could it be that Blind Chen was really capable of predicting the future as rumored? Not prophet so much. It's just because I can't see with my eyes that I perceive things more clearly than others, and could see some things that ordinary people can't, Blind Chen continued. But Yi Futian couldn't really understand that either. As for why I waited for you, my friend, it was not because I predicted anything, but because someone had asked me once to wait for you. However, when I saw you, I was more certain than ever that you, my friend, are indeed the one I have been waiting for, Blind Chen said. Who? Yi Futian asked. All this seemed to have become even more mysterious. Someone had asked Blind Chen to wait for him? And it was more than 20 years ago. Who could it be? He didn't want to say, so I dare not disclose it. As long as you know that this is the case, that is sufficient for now. I believe that you will know who it is in the future, Blind Chen explained. Yi Futian understood that Blind Chen wouldn't say anything more at this point. The accurate word he used was not that he didn't want to, but that he dared not to. Blind Chen was a mysterious and unpredictable figure, also known as Chen the Diviner. All 4 top principalities in the Great Bright City were a little apprehensive of him. However, he himself was convinced of a prophecy that someone else had told him more than 2 decades ago, and he dared not reveal that person's identity. Therefore, the identity of this other person was very intriguing. Just who was it that had exercised such great power over him? And what did it have to do with him? Could this involve the secret of his own birth? How do I unlock the secrets of the Temple of Light? Asked Yi Futian. Previously, you went to the Portal of Light, and that is where the Temple of Light lies today, Blind Chen continued. What will happen after it's unlocked? Yi Futian asked again. Chen Yi will inherit the power of the light, Blind Chen said. Chen Yi. Yi Futian looked at Chen Yi next to Blind Chen, and saw Blind Chen nod. He continued, you must be familiar with Chen Yi's abilities. As you know, he was born under the light, with the power of light flowing in his body, and he is destined to be the heir of the light. However, he needs your help now. Yi Futian was more curious than ever as he glanced at Blind Chen and Chen Yi. He asked, I have a question that I hope the elder can answer. Please go ahead, little friend. Blind Chen responded amicably enough. Did Chen Yi and I meet by chance or by careful arrangement? Yi Futian asked. Since he had been asked to help Chen Yi, he felt he had the right to know everything. When Blind Chen heard Yi Futian's question, the expression on his face became somber. Chen Yi, too, was regarding Yi Futian with some seriousness. Obviously, no one wanted to be used. Before, Yi Futian had always thought their encounter was chance, and he had cherished it as such, treating him as a good friend. But if all this turned out to be a carefully arranged event, it would instill suspicion in his heart, as no one would be happy able being used as a tool by another. It was not a coincidence. Before Blind Chen had a chance to answer, Chen Yi already responded. Let me explain. Blind Chen interrupted Chen Yi and explained to Yi Futian. This still has something to do with the person I mentioned before. I can tell you that this matter was not arranged by me, but orchestrated by someone else. As for Chen Yi, he doesn't really know much of anything. He was just following what I told him to do. As for the person behind the scenes, although I can't tell you who he is, I swear to you that he would never do anything to hurt you. How can you be so sure? Yi Futian asked. If he wanted you to die, it's easy enough for him to do, so there is no need to spend so much energy to set it up. Blind Chen gave him an irrefutable reason. Someone that he was afraid of. Someone whom even Chen the diviner believed in must be some incredibly strong existence. And if such an existence had been keeping tabs on his every move in the dark, it must indeed be very easy to kill him if that were the goal. Ultimately, both parties had foreseen that he would come here. Very well. Yi Futian had a suspicion in his heart, so he didn't say anything more, but simply agreed. Chen Yi was a friend of his and had saved him once. Since there were no other intentions, he had no reason to refuse. Thank you, my friend. Blind Chen got up and bowed to Yi Futian slightly, saying, After Chen Yi inherits the light, he will accompany you and assist you. I believe he can be a great help to you, my little friend. You are overly courteous, kind sir. Chen Yi and I are friends already, so there is no need to say those things. Yi Futian also got up and helped Blind Chen to sit down again. However, he knew very clearly now that someone had arranged all of this. He didn't expect that what seemed to be a coincidental encounter at the Donghua banquet in the Donghua domain was not a coincidence after all. Chen Yi had been there because of him. In light of this new perspective, some of the things that happened later made a lot of sense now. But he still had one more question. What was Chen Yi's background? And what was his relationship with Blind Chen? Why would Blind Chen think that he would be the heir of the light? Chapter 24:15, Piety. Chapter 24:15. Piety. Outside of the old mansion, the various cultivators all remained there. No one left. Their wills enveloped the old mansion. However, after the doors closed, a faint light enveloped the old mansion and cut off their wills, preventing them from spying on everything that was happening inside. Naturally, no one tried to forcefully break through this barrier. They all waited outside patiently. As expected, not long after, a powerful aura spread out. In an instant, a group of cultivators descended. They were cultivators from the Lin clan. Their leader was an elder who appeared extremely authoritative and sharp. There were two other elders beside him, who also had terrifying auras. They were all old monsters of the Lin clan and seniors of Lin Kong, the clan head of the Lin clan, Patriarch Lin. When they saw the authoritative elder in the lead, many people in different locations greeted him with a bow. They clearly recognized the other party. This elder was the Patriarch and the mastermind behind the scenes of the Lin clan. Patriarch Lin glanced around him. He then looked towards the old mansion. A terrifying aura emanated from his figure and enveloped the space. All the cultivators present could sense a majestic pressure and an extremely sharp will acting on them. All around the mansion, many cultivators felt an extreme pressure suffocating them. Blind Chen, isn't this too much? Asked Patriarch Lin in a loud voice. His voice contained a menacing wave of sound. It caused sound ripples to form in the air. Even the old mansion trembled and seemed as though it was about to collapse. These past few years, Patriarch Lin had been cultivating in seclusion, attempting to break through to the next plane. If it weren't for the events of today, Lin Kong would not have disturbed him. With a loud bang, the doors of the old mansion were immediately shattered. The light shroud that cut off the wills of the cultivators naturally also disappeared without a trace. The crowd looked inside past the doors. Then a group of people emerged. Blind Chen still held on to his crutch. He looked at Patriarch Lin, who stood in midair, and said, I have warned your junior before. Since Lin clan hasn't been able to discipline your junior, she will naturally have to pay the price for what she has done. Lin clan has been rather courteous with you all these years, have we not? Patriarch Lin's voice was cold as his might enveloped everyone present. Yi Futian frowned when a terrifying aura pressed down on him and the others. The aura belonged to someone who was at a level higher than Ren Huang. The cultivation plane of Patriarch Lin had exceeded the Runhuang plane. He was someone who had survived the first stage of the divine tribulation of the Great Path. Even though the Great Bright Domain was a weak domain, there were still many forces located here. The leading 4 major forces were all based in this region, forming a cluster of strong cultivators. The strongest existences were all cultivators who had survived the first stage of the divine tribulation of the Great Path. Of course, some mysterious cultivators could occasionally be spotted in the Great Bright Domain. They were foreign cultivators who came here to pry into the relic of the Bright Temple. However, all of them had found nothing, and they would soon leave the place. Only the cultivators of the 4 major forces stayed here permanently. Blind Chen did not respond to Patriarch Lin's question. Instead, he took a few steps forward and announced, "Haven't all of you been wanting to verify the prophecy? Now let us go to the portal of light." The eyes of the cultivators narrowed when they heard his words. A brilliant light flashed in their eyes. Did Blind Chen mean that the ruins of the Bright Temple would appear once again today? Many people couldn't help but take another look at Yi Futian. Blind Chen had been waiting for Yi Futian's arrival, and he welcomed him with light today. Now that Yi Futian was here, they were going to the portal of light immediately. What did this mean? Even Patriarch Lin was stunned. The might he unleashed actually lessened. Clearly, the relic of the Bright Temple was far more important to him than the life of a junior. No one showed signs of attacking anymore. When they saw Blind Chen striding forward, they followed him and moved towards the portal of light. The gazes of the cultivators of the Lin clan were as cold as ice when they stared at Blind Chen's back. However, since Patriarch Lin did not do anything, they suppressed their killing intent and followed behind him closely. Not long after, a group of people arrived at where the portal of light was. People would still occasionally come to this ruin. Many cultivators were observing this portal of light. They wanted to comprehend its mysteries. However, no one dared to enter inside. After all, in the past, all those who entered the portal of light ended up with tragic fates. Chen the diviner has arrived. Many people recognized Blind Chen when they saw him. In Great Bright City, Blind Chen was still very famous. Rumor has it that his eyes were blinded after he entered the portal of light. They could not withstand the power of light in the portal. This caused him to lose his eyesight permanently. Now, why had Blind Chen brought the cultivators of Great Bright City here? Were they going to enter the portal of light again? Blind Chen's figure landed in the ruins. Chen Yi Futian and the others also landed. Behind them, the figures of the cultivators of the various forces remained floating in midair. They were waiting quietly behind them, awaiting Blind Chen to act. They were waiting to see how he was going to open the relic of the Bright Temple. The relic of light had not been opened for countless years. Was it going to open just because a mere youth had arrived here? Yi Futian himself did not understand. Blind Chen claimed that Yi Futian could unravel the mystery of the Bright Temple. However, there was just a portal of light here. What did Yi Futian have to work with? This portal of light also seemed very dangerous. Blind Chen faced the portal of light. His expression was stern. He had not been here for many years. Today, there was finally hope for the mystery of light to be unraveled. He bowed slightly towards the portal of light, and then prostrated himself on the ground, worshipping the portal. It was as though this was his religion, and he was displaying his unparalleled piety. When Yi Futian saw this scene, he revealed a strange look. Who was Blind Chen exactly? Why was he so pious towards the Bright Temple? Could it be that there existed a connection between Blind Chen and the temple? However, the Bright Temple was a top force in ancient times. Why would Blind Chen have a connection with it? Yi Futian had heard that Blind Chen had lived for many years. Even so, he could not possibly be a cultivator from ancient times who survived until the present day, right? If it were so, it would be inconceivable. The cultivators of the various major forces were also stunned. Only the senior figures had normal expressions. Nothing seemed strange to them. They had clearly seen Blind Chen acting this way before. Blind Chen uttered some strange sounds. The crowd did not understand what he had said. Blind Chen then got up and stood there facing the portal of light. He said, "More than 2 decades ago, I proclaimed that light would descend and the relic of the Bright Temple would reappear. Today is the day that the prophecy comes true. All of you wish to open the relic of the bright temple, right? Then, please enter the portal of light together. When they heard Blind Chen's words, the cultivators narrowed their gazes as they stared at his silhouette. Enter the portal of light? Everyone knew about the dangers of the portal. Was he asking them to seek their deaths by exploring inside? They obviously would not easily agree to do so. Old Diviner, you and your group should be the ones to lead the way, said Patriarch Lin in a cold tone. Chapter 24:16. Probing. Chapter 24:16. Probing. None of the other cultivators moved. Clearly, none of them wanted to help the others get to the prize inadvertently. If the entry to the portal of light could be obtained so easily, they would have entered it already instead of waiting until now. Everyone knew about the danger that lay just beyond the portal of light in the City of Light. Inside this seemingly transparent portal of light, a small world seemed to exist with an entire universe of its own. Blind Chun was quietly perceiving all of this, and he now commented casually, "You all want to explore the relic of the light, but none of you are willing to sacrifice anything. Do you think that the relic of the Temple of Light will just appear in front of you as you stand here, waiting for you to inherit it? Many years ago, I tried to open the relic of the Temple of Light, but it was only possible from the inside. Now, the one who can open the portal of light that I've been waiting for all this time is here. Next, all of you will need to cooperate so that everyone can enter the Temple of Light together. To pave the way for our young friend to open the portal of light means that there will inevitably be some sacrifices. After the relics of the Temple of Light reappear in the world, whatever you can get from it will depend only on yourselves." Blind Chen's voice could be heard throughout the void, and everyone heard it loud and clear. However, no one responded to him, as they just looked at Blind Chen, without revealing much in their expressions. Of course, many of them were looking at Futian, the one who could open the portal of light. So the cultivators from the 4 major principalities would enter the portal of light, just to pave the way for him? Why should they? Why should they pin their hopes on a youngster? Who exactly is this person? It's hardly convincing just based on an old diviner's say-so, said the Long Clan's leader in an indifferent tone. Up until now, none of them had been able to figure out Futian's true identity. All they knew was that he came with Chun Yi to the City of Light. Perhaps it was Blind Chun who asked Chun Yi to search for him. You don't need to know so much about who our young friend is. But if anyone in this world can unlock the secret of the portal of light, then, under the Great Emperor, I am afraid no one else except our friend here can get it done. Blind Chen continued nonchalantly. The likes of the Great Emperors were excluded, of course. They were imperial-level existences, which would make it much easier for them to open the relics of other Great Emperors, so they cannot be taken into consideration. Therefore, he said it had to be under the level of the Great Emperor. But even so, it was still mighty high praise coming from the blind man. Under the Great Emperor, was Futian the only one who could open the relic of light? Blind Chen spoke to Futian via voice transmission, and Futian immediately understood what he meant. It was probably just as he had speculated. Sure, Futian replied with a single word. He then took a step forward and said, "You can confirm it yourselves. If the elder were right, you would be the first to enter. If the elder is wrong, then I will enter the portal of light first." Upon hearing Futian's words, everyone's eyes sharpened slightly. Yu Ho and the others looked at Futian keenly until someone said, "How can we confirm it?" "Don't feel obligated," Futian said casually, an invisible current flowing upon him. The aura of the Great Path diffused from him, and the aura of Ren Huang in the 8th realm also bloomed. But when they felt his aura, all these cultivators were slightly relieved. After all, it seemed that he was not all that amazing. He was just in the 8th realm. "In that case, I will do it," said a voice. In the void, Yu Ho took a step forward, and countless eyes focused on him immediately. In the next moment, they saw an incredibly fervent sun appear behind Yu Ho. The sun expanded rapidly, turning into a terrible vision that lay across the sky. An incomparable light began to shoot out from the vision. This divine light was not only the light of the flaming Great Path. It seemed to also contain the way of the light. In a moment, Countless rays of light rained down, not just on Yi Futian's side, but they also snaked towards Blind Chun and the others. It was very obviously deliberate, but around Blind Chun and the others, an invisible power of light now shrouded them. It was Chun Yi who had made a move as he released the power of the light. Yi Futian didn't move. He merely stood there and looked up. The divine light on Yuho's body shone directly on his body, making a sizzling sound. This terrifying force of destruction seemed to want to drill into Yi Futian's body, but an incomparable divine light circulated upon his body, making it impossible for that destructive light to invade. What? Everyone frowned. How could this be? Although Yuho didn't make a direct move, the power he released was considerable. It was, however, completely ignored by the others. It's far too weak, whispered Yi Futian, which made Yuho's heart tremble. Then he saw Yi Futian raise his head and look at him. Among all the cultivators present, except for Yi Futian and his own group, only Blind Chun was not surprised. Since he knew about Yi Futian's deeds in the original realm, he was quite unsurprised by his combat effectiveness. Just as he had said, people like Yuho may be the enchanting existence of Great Bright City, but in front of Yi Futian, they dimmed in comparison. Who are you really? Yuho stood in the void and questioned Yi Futian while staring at him. Yi Futian glanced at him without bothering to respond. Now that he had offended the imperial palace, there were still many forces in the divine prefecture that had not forgotten about him, even if Donghuang the Great had let him off the hook. Although there might not be much danger to speak of in the Great Bright Domain, he was not eager to expose himself. After this business finished, he planned to leave for the Western world immediately. Who else would like to give it a try? Yi Futian asked, looking at the cultivators from the four top forces in the void. Now that Yuho was repelled by a single blow, other cultivators in the 8th realm would hardly qualify as a challenge. For a time, no one moved a muscle. If no one else is interested in coming forward, then please enter the portal of light. Yi Futian looked at the door in front of him and said, "The 7 Stars Mansion would like to see your strength." The 7-Night Star Lord of the 7 Stars Mansion stepped forward. Several others followed right behind him. Everyone looked alarmed. Were these 7 powerful cultivators ready to raise their hands against Yi Futian? Us 7 at the 7-Star Mansion are one and the same. Your cultivation is superb. Hope you don't mind, said the 7-Night Star Lord. Obviously, he realized that the power of one man was hardly enough to affect Yi Futian in any meaningful way. So he wanted the 7 of them to try in a united effort to see what kind of character this Yi Futian was. As you please. Yi Futian stood there quietly. It seemed as if he didn't mind at all that he was up against a party of 7. The 7 Star Lords levitated into the air. In an instant, the firmament underwent a drastic change, and a starry sky world appeared above them, covering the entire area. The 7 Star Lords were stationed in different directions, forming a kind of a matrix. 7 stars moved as one coherent entity. When Yi Futian saw this, he slowly levitated into the air as well. After a while, he was suspended in the void right underneath the 7 cultivators. Buzz! The 7 Star Lords of the 7 Stars Mansion possessed an astounding aura. The stars revolved as 7 stars gathered together. The 7-Night Star Lord raised his hand and slammed towards Yi Futian. Suddenly, a dull rumbling sound came from the sky. Many stars had gathered and surrounded that giant palm. It blasted toward Yi Futian at the same time. Yi Futian raised his head as he took in the sight. His mind turned ever so slightly, and suddenly, a miniature version of the starry sky world appeared around him. The starry light screen surrounded him and closed, turning into a defense. The attack in the void blasted down, and a sudden dull rumbling was heard. However, it could not shake the light screen that was blocked in front of Yi Futian. The expressions on the faces of the 7 Star Lords changed a bit. Their divine consciousness twitched slightly, and suddenly, even more stars appeared between heaven and earth. However, at this moment, Yi Futian's mind turned again, and countless starlight spread outward as the will of the great path shrouded the boundless space. Soon, a great starry sky world appeared in this space, and the stars in the sky were shining brightly. They were suspended in the sky, surrounding the starry sky world formed by the 7-star lords. All the onlookers watched with great interest. This was the suppression of the Great Path domain, which directly overpowered the Great Path domain of another. The 7-star lords watched the stars revolving in the sky. The power emitted from the stars alerted them. The energy effused from the 7-night star lord gradually diminished as he looked at Yi Futian and said, "It seems that the old diviner was right after all." They had indeed been outdone by Yi Futian. In an instant, the starlight dissipated, and their auras retracted as well. Seeing this, Yi Futian did the same. The 7-star lords took one last look at Yi Futian, then stepped back, but not without some deep thoughts of their own. Indeed, there would always be some youngsters out there that could get the better of them. They had thought that their strength was second to none, but they never expected that someone could suppress them to this degree, that they had no ability to fight back. There were many other cultivators from the great bright city around the relic. Many of them were in total shock when they saw what just transpired in front of them. They were now even more curious about Yi Futian and everything about him. In front of him, these top figures from the great bright city looked like weaklings. Obviously, it was not because they were weak, but that Yi Futian was far too strong. "I don't think there is any need for more tests," Blind Chen said. "I've already said that he is the one who can open the relic of the Temple of Light, and so he is. All of you have been in the great bright city for many years, and if you too want to open the relic of the Temple of Light, then please believe what I have said and assist our friend." Chapter 24:18, Entry. Chapter 24:18. Entry. Everyone was silent. They had seen Yi Futian's true strength, and it was indeed extraordinary. It seemed that what Blind Chen had said could be true. However, entry to the Portal of Light had its own inherent risk. After all, there were many rumors about the Portal of Light. This was the only thing left from the glory days of the Temple of Light, thus shrouded in mystery. Among the people here, only Blind Chen knew the Portal of Light the best. Furthermore, they couldn't fathom what Blind Chen was thinking or what he would do. They were concerned about some unforeseen motives on his part, and that was why they hesitated. "If none of you want the relic of the Temple of Light to reappear, then just pretend I never said anything," Blind Chen continued. "The person who can open it has been found, but your cooperation and assistance are requested. If you don't want to lend a hand, I will have to find some other way." Everyone remained silent when they heard Blind Chen's words. Even Yi Futian himself didn't quite understand what Blind Chen had in mind, or why he was so convinced that he could solve the secret held by the Portal of Light. Although he had unlocked many relics belonging to great emperors, was Blind Chen's confidence in him based on the man behind the scenes? In other words, the one who arranged for Chenyi to meet him and guide him to this place. "How many people do you need?" someone asked. It was the cultivator who had gotten into it with Blind Chen earlier, Patriarch Lin. Not long ago, he was all hot and bothered about getting a piece of Blind Chen. But now he was the first to speak, which was kind of surprising. True enough, in the face of their own interests, all grievances could be set aside for the time being. Of course, the more the better, the greater the chance. Blind Chen responded. Moreover, the stronger the cultivation, the better. There is no point to send those with weaker cultivation. Patriarch Lin pondered for a moment, and did not immediately answer him. The Lan family's clan leader also spoke up. "What do you need us go in for?" Until now, they had no inkling of Blind Chen's plan. He might not be telling them everything, but they had to ask at the very least. To scope things out. Blind Chen's answer was short and simple. "You all know that there is a spatial world hidden behind the Portal of Light. But exactly what is inside, even I have no clue. Someone needs to scout the way ahead for our young friend here, so that he has the opportunity to open the relic. This is why your help is much needed." Blind Chen's straightforward answer convinced many. It could be that Blind Chen's really needed them to find the way inside the Portal of Light. "How dangerous is it?" someone from the Yu family asked. "How should I know?" Blind Chen replied. "I don't know that much about the Portal of Light either. I only know that the answer to opening this relic must lie beyond this Portal of Light. So I prophesied and strategized for this day. Today is the day that the light shall reappear. This is derived from my calculations. If my prediction is correct, then all of you will agree with me on this day anyway. Everyone couldn't help but reveal an odd look when they heard this, especially those from the Lin family. Those words sounded so familiar to them. It was not long ago since they heard the prediction made about Lin Shi. He had predicted that Lin Shi would face a catastrophe of death. But the premise was that Lin Shi would choose to raise her hand first. And indeed, Lin Shi had caused her own death. All things considered, they would agree to do this thing today. And did this mean that the long-awaited relic of the Temple of Light would be revealed once again in the world? You have all arrived. There's no need for you to continuing lurking in the dark, Patriarch Lin said loudly. Suddenly, in the distance, several powerful auras were detected from 3 major directions. Moments later, 3 powerful cultivators came out and walked over to them. They were the masters behind the other 3 top principalities: the Patriarch of the Lan family, the Patriarch of the Yu family, and the Chief of the 7 Stars Mansion. 3 cultivators who reigned above Renhuang had descended. Their auras were terrifying, and their authority suppressed this corner of the sky. What do you think? Patriarch Lin asked as his eyes swept over the other 3. Since the old diviner has spoken, we have to help, Patriarch Yu said, and the others nodded in agreement. The Patriarch of Lan family looked at them and said, if this is the case, then let's first dispatch some cultivators from the family and have them assist the old diviner. Very well. As they reached a consensus, the cultivators from all the major forces returned to their bases to call on more cultivators. If the relic of the Temple of Light appears today, you will all be rewarded, Blind Chen said as he waited quietly. After some time, cultivators from those major forces arrived. Yi Futian knew very well that those who were sent here were not key figures at the core of these major families, as they were being sent on a highly risky mission. Those major forces would be most reluctant to risk the lives of their most central figures. Even though Blind Chen had previously said that those with stronger cultivation were preferred, how could they abide by Blind Chen's words so easily? These cultivators were a little apprehensive at the moment. After all, they were supposed to enter the portal of light. However, the orders from their patriarchs were like orders from heaven. So even if they were reluctant, they had to obey. After waiting for some time, Blind Chen spoke again and asked, is everyone ready? All set. Please tell us what you want us to do, old diviner, said Patriarch Lan. Very well. Blind Chen nodded and continued. I must remind you that it is completely fine if you don't want to go in. But once you are in, I cannot guarantee anything that might happen inside the portal of light. If something happens, don't blame me. When everyone heard the old man's words, they were a little uncertain again. But Yu Ho spoke at this time. Patriarch, I will go in as well. In the previous battle with Yi Futian, Yu Ho was defeated by a single blow. Obviously, the wound was still fresh for him. Now the opportunity to enter the portal of light was upon them. He wanted to see if he could seize his fortune there. The Patriarch of the Yu family glanced at Yu Ho, then nodded. As you wish. After that, the top figures from all major forces took the initiative to ask permission from their respective families, intending on gaining entry into the portal of light. Soon, the cultivators who were to enter the portal of light were confirmed. As all of them moved forward, Blind Chen said, everyone may proceed directly inside. It's best to be prepared, however. Just proceed straight ahead. Afterward, he spoke to Yi Futian via voice transmission. After you enter the portal of light, you must rely on your own wit, my friend. Even I will not be much help, but I will go in with you. I got it, Yi Futian replied. Let's go. Blind Chen said in a low voice when he saw that the cultivators in front of them had already entered the portal of light. Yi Futian looked ahead. He saw those who walked through the portal of light simply disappear. It was as if they had entered a mirror. It was truly amazing to behold. Behind this portal of light was an entire universe, mysterious and unpredictable. Once you enter, watch yourself, Blind Chen said. I will do my best to protect you, my friend. Yi Futian sobered up some. Blind Chen's tone was serious, indicating that their mission this time was highly risky. More importantly, what Blind Chen said seemed to suggest that his cultivation must be superior. Chapter 2419. Inside the Small World. Chapter 2419. Inside the small world, Yi Futian told Uncle Tai, Hua Jieyu, and the others to stay on the outside. This was so that they could take care of Feng Xiyuan and the young ones outside, while keeping an eye on the four major forces, in case they had any tricks up their sleeves. Only Chen Yi and Yi Futian were the two that entered the portal of light with Blind Chen. Ultimately, this was their objective. Blind Chen asked Yi Futian to open the relic of the Temple of Light, which would then be inherited by Chen Yi. There was no need for the others to participate. As the cultivators entered the portal of light, Blind Chen, Chen Yi, and Yi Futian also stepped through the door. Suddenly, Yi Futian had a strange feeling, as if he had entered into another world. In an instant, endless light flooded the space. And under the light, no one could open their eyes. In this space, there was nothing but the light. It seemed that this was a world of the light. Other people had entered as well. In this bright world, everyone seemed to be blinded. They tried to sync the power of the great path with the space inside this world, but the whole world was occupied by the light, and they could not sync with the way of this world. There was only one kind of cultivator who was able to do so to some extent, and that was those who cultivated the method of light. Chen Yi's released his divine consciousness, fusing his own method with the great path of this world. However, he found that he could only control a small area around himself. It was as if his cultivation was completely insufficient. This was once the place where the Temple of Light chose their disciples. It was where they received the baptism of light. Many years ago, anyone who wanted to enter the Temple of Light had to undergo the test of light, also known as the baptism of light, which was right in front of this portal of light. Those who failed would be killed. Only those who survived the baptism of light were qualified to enter the Temple of Light. Blind Chen continued, just behind the portal of light, there is a murderous matrix of the light. I asked them to come with us inside for them to clear the way for us. Pay attention, my friend. I will also be watching out for you. I got it. Yi Futian acknowledged the warning. Blind Chen was known as the Old Diviner by people from the City of Light. The cultivators of the City of Light wanted to use him to open the relic of the light, just like he was using the four major forces, and had them send in their people as matrix fodder. People at this level were far from benevolent and gentle souls. But Yi Futian also understood that although Blind Chen firmly believed that he was the one who could open the relic, he had no idea how that could be achieved, or what kind of abilities he actually possessed. On the contrary, perhaps the man behind the scenes who guided Blind Chen knew much more. Not just about him, but also the secrets that were hidden behind the portal of light. He was so convinced that Yi Futian would be the one to open it. Yi Futian now released his perception freely, and wisps of aura circulated about him. The life spirit of the ancient tree of life was swaying inside his body, with a faint glow of imperial glory. He understood that in this world of light, the divine power was the one that drove this space. Otherwise, it would not have been so powerful. Therefore, ordinary cultivators were blinded in this world of light. Only those with an equivalent level may explore and see into this world, and only the power of a higher level was qualified to examine this world. Yi Futian did not hesitate to release the aura inside his body. He directly resorted to pumping his own life spirit into this world of light. At the same time, his eyes opened, and those eyes seemed a little wicked. There were stripes across the pupils, like the eyes of a deity, probing the secrets of this world. At this moment, Yi Futian could clearly see the area around him. It turned out to be a ruin. It looked like the aftermath of a world that had been shattered. The power of light was sprinkling down from a distance away, but everything was a little fuzzy. With his realm, he could only probe the area immediately around him. This here is the shattered temple, Yi Futian said as he stepped onto the ruins. The cultivators in front of him continued forward, and suddenly there was a shrill scream. Yi Futian looked in the direction of the scream, and saw a light from above the sky directly shining upon that person. Instantly, one could see that person's eyes revealing their agonizing pain as his hands covered his eyes. There was blood flowing from them. It was an extremely shocking sight. Yi Futian tried to perceive what was above, but it was a bit unclear. It seemed as if a strange power enveloped this world. There seemed to be a murderous matrix that hovered above the firmament above. The baptism of light? Yi Futian murmured to himself, and realized right away that he could not set foot there. Over there, extremely radiant divine light penetrated the space, waiting to kill any passers-by. Blind Chen seemed to have perceived it as well. The cane in his hand hit the ground, and made a sound, indicating that he had veered away from that position, and followed the person, who hadn't had an accident in front of him. Obviously, he had exceptional perception, and was able to ascertain the specific location of the danger, thus avoiding it. Off and on people were attacked and many fell. Yi Futian could see all of this clearly, except for those who were too far ahead. The cultivators from the 4 major forces were proceeding with increased caution. Some even slowed down, and were reluctant to be at the front. Obviously, they had become aware of Blind Chen's true intention, which was using them as sacrifices in the bid to get through to the relic. At this time, the cultivators from the 4 major forces began to feel resentment in their hearts. Old Diviner seems to know about the situations in here? An indifferent voice questioned. The speaker was Patriarch Lin. Several figureheads also came in with everyone. Since Blind Chen had come inside, they felt there was nothing to be afraid of. However, even they were exercising extreme caution. They followed behind the crowd, scattered behind Blind Chen. Just as Blind Chen followed behind their people, they were following behind Blind Chen. Blind Chen did not seem to see it, nor did he care, as long as he achieved his own goal. I've heard some of it, Blind Chen responded. Stop all of you, the patriarch of the Yu family commanded. Stop. Several others also spoke up. Suddenly, the cultivators from the 4 major forces stopped. For a time, in this small world inside the portal of light, everything became so quiet that they could even hear the sound of their own breathing. The old diviner has gotten us knee-deep in this now. At least tell us what is going on. Patriarch Yu said coldly. Obviously, they knew that Blind Chen only told them some of the truth. It was highly likely that Blind Chen knew the condition of the small world inside the portal of light. Blind Chen stood quietly where he was and replied, I have already told you that I know very little. You all knew the danger in here before you came in, so why bother asking again? What's ahead? The chief of the 7 Stars Mansion asked. This spatial world was fraught with danger, and now they wanted to know what was ahead. Blind Chen was silent for a moment and then exclaimed, The real relic of the Temple of Light. As soon as he said that, everyone was quiet. Chapter 2420, Bright Temple. Chapter 2420, Bright Temple. As expected, Blind Chen knew about it. He actually knew that the real Bright Temple was hidden within the small world of the Portal of Light, and he had been waiting for this day all along. Blind Chen. Who was he actually? Although Blind Chen only told them part of the truth earlier, for some reason, all of the cultivators from the various forces subconsciously believed that the relic of the Bright Temple was right ahead. Although they couldn't see anything, they had no doubts about it. Perhaps they would be able to see some light once they walked out of this area. Continue forward, Patriarch Lin ordered. He decisively made the people of his clan continue. Be careful. Try your best to avoid any danger, Patriarch Lin said as well, though his reminder clearly wasn't very sincere. Otherwise, why didn't he walk at the front himself? After all, these clan elders were the strongest among the cultivators, so they would have the greatest chance of evading danger if they ran into any. Yet, they obviously didn't do so, as they were worried that they themselves would be caught up in dangerous situations. The cultivators didn't dare to disobey them, so they bit the bullet and continued to move forward, opening up the path for those behind them. The aura continued to spill out from Yi Futian. As he walked forward, the area that he could sense also became larger and larger. He could vaguely feel the murderous matrix of light above them, and the core of the matrix was right ahead as well. Ah! Just then, a blood-curdling scream came from darkness ahead of them, followed by several more. It seemed that none of the cultivators who moved forward managed to escape. What's happening there? Someone asked. Immediately, panic started to spread through the crowd. The cultivators leading at the front hesitated as well. In Yi Futian's world of perception, In front of them, rays of light were shining down from the void above, to form a cylindrical beam on the debris. At the center of the beam, light of obliteration was shooting down, destroying all the cultivators who walked into it. Moreover, these rings were now all interconnected. Unlike before, it was covering the entire space with its deadly attacks. Keep walking forward, do not stop. Patriarch Lin snarled. The expressions on the faces of the Lin clan cultivators quickly turned a little ugly. It seemed that the elders really didn't care about their lives at all. But the elders never cared about matters in the clan, and they had a fragile connection with the clan members, essentially not knowing them at all. It was honestly not surprising for the elders to not care about their lives. They were far more concerned about whether they can get something out of this door of space. The path ahead is a dead end, Futian said. All of the cultivators immediately stopped and started hesitating, unsure of whether they should keep moving. Obviously, even with the orders given to them, they knew that there was a large possibility they would die. Most of them wouldn't be willing to do it. They were now facing a dilemma. Before them laid a death trap. Not a single cultivator who entered previously came out alive. Now if they continued Tian, they would likely die. Under such circumstances, everyone was struggling. Old diviner, what's the meaning of your little friend there? Patriarch Lin asked impassively. He didn't expect Futian to advise people not to move forward, saying it was a death trap. By now, they've all realized that the relic of the Bright Temple could be just a short distance away from them. Of course it was out of goodwill, Blind Chin answered. Can't you sense that it's a dead end there? Dead end? Although the cultivators had their eyes closed, their eyebrows raised in curiosity. Old diviner, if it's a dead end, then what should we do? Patriarch Lan asked. Blind Chin remained silent. It seemed like he perceived the danger before them. On the other hand, Futian walked forward a few steps, and was instantly able to see more clearly. As he walked to the edge of the circular murderous matrix, Blind Chin reminded him, careful. It's fine, Futian said. Chen-Yi, come here. Chen-Yi walked forward as he heard Futian. He stood still and waited for Futian's next move. Do you believe in me? Futian asked. Yes, Chen-Yi nodded. After all these years, Chen-Yi knew Futian's character well. Also, since they were already inside, what was there to not believe him about? Walk in there, and make sure that other than the aura of light, there's no other aura on you, not even a slither. You must only have the purest of light, Futian said. There was no way to avoid this murderous matrix. The only way is to walk through it. He could feel that the rays of light before them could kill any great path powers, except for the great path of light. In other words, only the great path of light could survive it. Only those who possessed the purest great path of light could receive the baptism of light and pass through the matrix. All right. Chen-Yi nodded and walked forward according to Futian's instructions. He retracted all the auras of the great paths on him. Afterward, only the powers of light flowed across the surface of his body. He walked forward with his eyes closed and took deep breaths. He was actually slightly nervous. But the next moment, he entered a state of zen. As he bathed under the light, there were no other auras on him other than light. It was as if he had turned into the most perfect, flawless illuminating body of the great path. Chen-Yi was showered with a marvelous feeling. His footsteps slowed as he continued forward. It was as though he was enjoying every step. With every circle he walked past, he continued to greedily enjoy the baptism of the light. I knew it. It wasn't antagonizing, Futian said softly. Countless rays of light shone down from above and landed on where Chen-Yi was. Then, the entire matrix morphed, and a path was opened up. Everything before them turned clear as well. Futian watched what happened before him with shock and awe. His heart was moved by the magnificent display. Before them, a shockingly brilliant scene appeared. It was a divine temple so tall that the top was shrouded by mists and clouds. The entire temple was illuminated by divine light shining from above, and it looked like a holy relic in every sense of the word. The Bright Temple. Futian's heart pounded. He could scarcely believe that the Bright Temple was hidden within the small world inside the portal of light. This was an ancient myth that had been passed down for countless years. Legend had it that the great Emperor of Light created the Bright Temple in ancient times and erected it here. Countless years had passed since. People still remember this legend, and the region of light kept its name. He didn't expect that he would see the Holy Land showered by the light in this small world after all these years. The light became more magnificent as more and more rays shone down, affecting everyone's vision except for Yi Futian's. His eyes were still wide open as he stared at the scene before him. Chapter 24-21, Apostle. Chapter 24-21. Apostle. Everything before them proved that the legends were all real. The region of light was indeed where the Bright Temple was. Yi Futian looked forward. The divine temple was incredibly grandiose and magnificent. It looked like an enormous castle, extending into the skies to shine down an endless array of light from high up in the air. Other than being ancient, the temple was a little dilapidated, with several areas damaged. These seemed to be damage from the Great War of the ancient era. Below the divine palace, there was a door that looked like another portal of light. Two statues of light, each holding a scepter, stood on either side of the door. They seemed to be the guardians of light. The light continued morphing gradually. Yuho opened his eyes too, as he could finally see the scene before him clearly. It sent waves of shock through his heart. He said softly, "I didn't think that the legend was real. This is indeed a divine relic." One by one, the others opened their eyes. Although they were a little unaccustomed to the light, they were all gradually able to start seeing the scene before them. Perhaps it was because of the changes in the physical space of this small world. When they raised their head to look at the skies above the divine palace, they could see a diagram of light that looked like a divine matrix. The power of light was shining down from there, guarding the divine palace. The cultivators started walking forward one after another. The cultivators' eyes from each of the forces started getting heated, as their gazes slowly filled with greed and desire. For generations, they had been on guard at the region of light. Now they finally saw the divine relic. They didn't think Blind Chen's prophecy would come true, just by walking through the murderous light matrix. No one thought that it would be that easy to break through the murderous matrix. Perhaps it was because they knew nothing about light, yet Yi Futian could see right through it. Bling Chen walked forward, supporting himself with the cane in his hand. He came before the remains of the Bright Temple, and knelt on the ground once again. He kowtowed to the temple with great piety, as if he was the most pious believer of the Bright Temple, which made everyone even more suspicious of his true identity. Perhaps Blind Chen was related to the Bright Temple. Then, Blind Chen stood up and said, "Chenyi, go in." Yes. Chenyi stepped forward and walked towards the divine palace. "Futian, sorry to trouble you," Blind Chen then said to Yi Futian. Yi Futian nodded and followed behind Chenyi, preparing to escort him into the Temple of Light to inherit the powers of light. Perhaps all of the secrets laid inside the Temple of Light. Just then several extremely powerful auras erupted inside the space. The cultivators from all four of the great forces intervened, and the four elders were the first to attack. Patriarch Lin was the fastest amongst them. With just a thought, he spawned a sword will so great that it deluged the skies, traveling across the space and attacking Chen Yi and Yi Futian. But at the same time Blind Chen turned. His back was facing where Chen Yi said he was. Blazing will of bright erupted from his body, blinding everyone who looked at it directly. The light inundated the space and blocked off Chen Yi from him. Formless pulses erupted from the voids, as the will of light collided with the will of sword from Patriarch Lin. At this moment, Blind Chen finally unleashed his spectacular power. He turned out to be a cultivator, who had overcome the divine tribulation of the Great Path as well. His power level was definitely comparable to the four great elders. "Stop him," Patriarch Lin said with an ice-cold voice. Instantly cultivators from all of the four great forces attacked. They had already paid a heavy price to get here, and had suffered great losses, including the death of many of their clan members. Now that they had finally reached the divine palace, how could they let Chen Yi enjoy the fruits of their sacrifices alone? If they allowed him to do so, it would really be putting in all this effort for someone else. Blind Chen's cane suddenly knocked a few times on the ground of the Bright Temple debris. Instantly, Stone fragments and dust started flying, and at the same time, blazing light filled up the void. Everywhere the light went, terrified shrieks could be heard. The cultivators who dashed forward were pierced straight through by the light, before being turned into ash and disappearing into the air. Sword of Light. The expressions on the 4 strongest cultivators changed. In just an instant, many of their cultivators died. They had all been killed by Blind Chun. Many of them had been Runhuang-level cultivators. This made the rest of them hesitate and not dare to move forward. Blind Chun stood there, as if he was a one-man army. Yi Futian and Chun Yi had already walked through the door and entered the bright temple. Boom! The 4 great elders stepped forward at the same time. A terrifying dominion of the starry great path appeared around them. Celestial stars surrounded them and blocked out the skies, and the sun and intercepted the sword will of light from Blind Chun. A divine sun diagram appeared behind the great elder of the Yu clan and launched toward Blind Chun, clashing into his sword of light. It took a coordinated attack from the 4 strongest cultivators at the same time to stop the might of Blind Chun's path. Get in! Patriarch Lin's raised voice echoed through the air, immediately prompting the rest of the cultivators to dash forward, going around the battlefield to enter the bright temple. The path might of the 4 great cultivators attacked simultaneously, attempting to overwhelm Blind Chun as the elders moved in an attempt to bypass him and enter the divine palace. He was perceiving whether or not this divine matrix was the same as the one outside, and if entry could be gained using the incomparably pure light. As for the people behind, he didn't really care for them, not even a bit. When he saw that the 2 had completely ignored him, Lin Kong and the others had an extremely cold look about them, and their attention was now on Chun Yi. Since Blind Chun told them that Yi Futian was the key to opening the relic, they would first start with Chun Yi. Chun Yi had killed his descendant Lin Shi. When his thought turned to this, Lin Kong's eyes became cold, and he took a step forward. Then, he raised a finger and pointed in Chun Yi's direction. Buzz! A tremendously radiant light burst out of Chun Yi, his body as the center. A sword wheel of light appeared, surrounding him and clashed with the terrifying sword will that came in for the kill. The explosion erupted with frightening power, causing the sword of light in front of Chun Yi to shatter, as he took a step back simultaneously. His cultivation was Ran Huang in the 8th realm, so attacks from cultivators in the 9th realm could still threaten him. Are you going in by yourself, or should we make you? Lin Kong took a step forward and said coldly to Chun Yi. An invisible sword will envelop Yi Futian and Chun Yi, and they felt that the space around them contained a horrific sword will. It was as if just a thought would drive the sword will to descend upon them in an instant. Yi Futian turned around slowly and looked in Lin Kong's direction. He walked towards Lin Kong and said, "If so, you can go in." Lin Kong frowned. Was he telling him to go in? Although Yi Futian's cultivation was tremendous, and he had defeated Yu Ho in the 8th realm and the 7-star lords, the gap between them was a fact. He was a peak Runhung in the 9th realm, and at this moment, Yi Futian was so arrogant and confident that he told Lin Kong to go in. Yi Futian stopped, standing there with his white robe fluttering. He looked incredibly confident in himself, and gave the onlookers a sense of preeminence. It was as if he was immovable. Buzz! A horrible sword will shrouded Yi Futian. In an instant, Yi Futian felt that he had entered the world of swords. Although nothing seemed to be around him, he knew that he had already fallen into his opponent's domain of swordsmanship. He could perceive that it was an invisible domain, and in this domain around him, the swords were everywhere, hidden in the invisible space. "You're much too insolent," said Lin Kong. As soon his voice faded, he made the gesture of squeezing his palm. Suddenly there was a terrifying sharp sound all around Yi Futian, and the invisible sword that hid in the space moved at the same time. They slashed through the space, slicing through the void where Yi was. It seemed that with just a single thought, that space would be shattered into smithereens. Yi Futian stood there and didn't move, but there was divine light circulating over the surface of his body. His physical body seemed to have been transformed into a divine body in an instant. He was surrounded by the incomparable divine light of the Great Path, and a shocking roar erupted from his body. A sharpish sound came out, and the space seemed to have been cut into fragments, with numerous sword marks. The terrible attack was coming at Futian as well, and he actually seemed to be its focal point. Pust! A harsh, scratchy sound came from Futian's body. Divine light blazed all over his body. Everyone was shocked to discover that when the sword will cut through the space and descended upon him, it was unable to move Futian even an inch. How is this possible? Lin Kong's expression changed quickly to shock. His great path attack could not break down Futian's defense? How could this happen? Was this really a cultivator in the 8th realm? The expression of those surrounding cultivators changed. A cultivator of the 9th realm could not make Futian move? How horrific was this physical body? At this time, when they looked at Futian again, he was surrounded by the divine light, as if he were some kind of deity, invincible and all-powerful. Futian's clothes were moving freely. When he was still in the 7th realm, he had already defeated Xiao Mu, the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Now that he was in the 8th realm, he was battling superior Run Huang in the 9th realm. Lin Kong was not even a concern for him. It seemed that the Great Bright City was still a pretty weak opponent for him. The current strength of Futian's divine body was already at the limit of an ordinary Run Huang of the 9th realm. Futian was confident that he was close to being invincible and was difficult to defeat by cultivators in the Run Huang realm, unless it were those exceptional enchanting figures of the world. Are you going in by yourself, or should I make you? Futian asked Lin Kong. It was something Lin Kong had said to Chunyi before, but now Futian was using on him. Was this really the clan leader of the Lin family, who was at the peak of Run Huang? In front of Futian, a mere Run Huang in the 8th realm, he had no way of fighting back. The one strike he unleashed was blocked, and caused his arm to be totally destroyed, and his life was now in the hands of his opponent. How could a Run Huang in the 8th realm be this tyrannical? Futian's eyes were sharp, as they fixed upon Lin Kong. They were like the eyes of a deity, looking down on the Run Huang of the 9th realm in front of him. Several other peak Run Huang were watching speechless. No wonder Blind Chun was not worried, and merely occupying himself by tangling up a few patriarchs. It turned out that Futian was exceptionally powerful. Futian picked Lin Kong up and walked towards that divine matrix of light. When they reached the front of the matrix, Futian's arm pitched, and Lin Kong's body was thrown into the divine matrix of light. In the sky above, beams of light spilled down, and countless beams of light landed on Lin Kong at the same time. Lin Kong let out a horrific scream, and then his body was penetrated by the light. The next moment, under everyone's shocking gazes, his body turned into light as well. It completely dissipated between heaven and earth, not leaving the slightest trace. This, a cultivator at the peak of Run Huang, under the light, disappeared directly and completely, turning into spots of light. The peak of Run Huang, gone in a flash. Of everyone that was here, who could enter that divine matrix of light? Just as I thought. Futian remarked silently to himself. This divine matrix of light did not allow for the existence of any other great path, except the light itself. However, he was feeling a little differently than before. Previously, when the divine matrix was circulating, there seemed to be a special kind of light that appeared, and it was not just a murderous matrix. Let me try. Futian stepped forward, and inside the life-spirit world of his body, the ancient tree of the world swayed. Currents that were shining with the divine glory of the great emperor spread outward. They then flowed into that divine matrix of light. Suddenly, the light within the divine matrix seemed to detect the invasion of other great path powers. And suddenly, rays of brilliant divine light were shining, wanting to wipe out this invading force. However, this strand of will of the way seemed unable to be erased. It was still existing in that light, wandering inside, invading gradually, even covering the area around the divine matrix of the light. Chunyi, bring those who were in the altercation before and send them inside, said Futian. Chunyi nodded in acknowledgement. Before, in addition to Lin Kong, several others from the Lin family had taken action against Futian and himself. Clearly he had perceived it. When he turned around, Chunyi's eyes fell on the two people from the Lin family. he asked. Do you want to go in on your own, or should I make you? The two men paled while their bodies were moving rapidly in retreat. Entering that divine matrix was the same as death. Why would they go in there themselves? Buzz. Seeing the reaction of the two, Chen Yi's body turned into a light, and the two Renhuang were caught at the same time. As the light flashed, the two Renhuang were thrown into the divine matrix. Suddenly, under the light beam of the divine matrix, the two figures slowly dissipated and turned into light, just like Lin Kong. It seemed that anyone who came here would face the same fate. But at this moment, the striations of light in the divine matrix changed, which was clearly captured by Yi Futian. Suddenly he seemed to understand everything. Same as before, but this time, you have to be more cautious. Any carelessness will result in total annihilation. Can you do it? Yi Futian asked Chen Yi. Chen Yi's expression was particularly grave as he nodded. The way of light enveloped his body, and his entire person seemed to have turned into a physique of light as he walked forward. Chen Yi was born to be extraordinary. After all, he was an illumining body of the great path himself. Because of that, he maintained the purest state of light, which was also why Yi Futian felt comfortable allowing him to try. If it were someone else, that person would surely die. Blind Chen had found Chen Yi as the heir to inherit the light, so he most likely knew about this as well. Chen Yi stepped into the light, and suddenly rays of light passed through his body as he released his great path of light to its limit. His whole body released an incomparable light, and he became one with the light inside. At the same time, Yi Futian's eyes were closed tightly, his mind moving slightly. Suddenly, the striations within the divine matrix were moving, as if controlled by his will. Below the divine matrix, a divine light shot straight up into the sky above, weaving together with the light that was falling down. Then, the two went straight above the firmament. At this moment, a terrible rumbling sound could be heard, and the whole temple was trembling. The divine light that burst out of the divine matrix was becoming more brazen. Yi Futian's power of the great path retracted as he stared ahead. In ancient times, this divine matrix was probably urged by cultivators of the temple, but now there was just him. Chapter 24-24. Eyes Open. Chapter 24-24. Eyes open. Once the divine matrix was activated, a phantom appeared within the beam of light behind Chen Yi, like a heavenly god, and surrounded him. In the next moment, Chen Yi's body swaying upwards, following the light released by the divine matrix all the way to the temple. The phantom of light disappeared with him. It was as if they had entered the core of the temple together. The beam of light suddenly dimmed as the divine matrix disappeared, and the light was gone. Inside the temple, loud rumbling continued, and the temple seemed on the verge of collapse. It seemed as if this divine matrix was the thing that supported the last ray of light from the temple. Yi Futian looked thoughtful at this moment. So, if the divine matrix of the light disappeared, would the temple of light collapse? This was the temple of light where the gods gathered in ancient times, so it could not have crumbled so easily. That was unless the temple was already in shambles from the collapse eons ago, but had been repaired only on the outside. The last divine matrix left in the temple of light was the power that had been holding it up all this time. From this perspective, the temple of light was very likely in possession of that last trace of the will from the gods, waiting for some future heir to inherit the light. When the person finally showed up, the temple would self-destruct and give way. As for Blind Chen, he was probably aware of some of these circumstances. He may have been searching for an heir of the light and found Chen Yi. Then, everything seemed to make sense now. The temple of light trembled even more violently. Looking up, cracks began to appear on the temple as it started to disintegrate. However, the cultivators here were extremely powerful, so nothing untoward would happen to them. Still, their hearts were greatly shocked. Where had Chen Yi been sent to? Bang! A falling boulder came down, and the divine light surrounding Yi Futian knocked the boulder away from him. The ruins around him began to pile up, and it didn't take long for the entire temple to come down completely. At the same time, there seemed to be a boundless dazzling light above the sky that forced their eyes shut. In the next moment, an invisible force seemed to push them as the stars revolved. and the whole world was in a state of disintegration. Futian closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened his eyes again, the ruins were still under his feet, but they were no longer the ruins of the Temple of Light inside. In front of them, there was a door, the Portal of Light. On this Portal of Light, dazzling light was still blooming. It was as if it was the light that had pushed them out. All the cultivators who had entered it before were sent out at this time, including the 5 top figures who fought outside the Temple of Light. Facing such a mysterious situation, they had no intention to continue fighting. In fact, they had stopped fighting as soon as the temple began to collapse, and the light bloomed. Watching the collapsing temple, their hearts were greatly disquieted. The temple had been turned to dust. Was this the Temple of Light they were looking for? And now, they had been sent outside. What was going on? What was happening? Patriarch Lin and other top figures asked as they looked for their youngsters. At the same time, Patriarch Lin found that Lin Kong, the clan leader of the Lin family, was missing. He wondered if that meant Lin Kong had been left behind in the Portal of Light. What did that mean? Could it be that Lin Kong had gotten the opportunity? But in the next moment his hope was dashed. He saw some cultivators of the Lin family lowered their heads, while others wore an expression of grief and indignation. Obviously, Lin Kong did not receive the inheritance, and from the reactions of those people, he could guess Lin Kong's fate. However, Lin Kong was a peak Ren Huang, and none of the people who entered had higher cultivation than him. At the most, they were even, so who killed him? My young friend. Blind Chen noticed Chen Yi's absence with just a glance. He lowered his head slightly and called out to Futian. However, Futian already knew what he meant and replied, "Don't worry, sir. Chen Yi has already touched the light." Blind Chen squeezed the cane in his hand. It seemed as if he was relieved. He raised his head slightly, facing the sky above, and said, "Thank you for your guidance." No one knew who he was referring to, but Futian gathered that it might be to the person who had told Blind Chen to find him, once upon a time. Blind Chen was an honest man. Even though the man from many years ago was not here, he still felt the need to express his gratitude. "My friend, great kindness has no adequate way to be repaid. After Chen Yi inherits the light, he will follow and assist you always," Blind Chen said to Futian again. Several major cultivators who were around them were impressed by his words. Who exactly was this Futian character? The blind man claimed outright that after Chen Yi inherited the light, he would assist Futian. If Chen Yi were to inherit the light, he would be the heir of the great Emperor of Light, and the heir to the God of Light from ancient times. Would such a cultivator assist Futian? Assist him to what end? But at this time, the cultivators from other major forces briefed their patriarchs on what happened inside the Temple of Light via voice transmission. Suddenly, their gazes toward Futian changed. He, who was a Ren Huang in the 8th realm, had taken down Lin Kong so effortlessly. Furthermore, Lin Kong's attack failed to shake his physical form, and he was captured by him instead of being tossed into the divine matrix of the light. He met his end there. Buzz! Suddenly, a terrifying sword will was born between heaven and the earth. Patriarch Lin rose into the sky. As the sword will covered the entire sky, it hovered above this area, as if it was omnipresent. Watch it. Blind Chen's body appeared in front of Futian in just a moment, as the most radiant light shrouded them both. The terrifying sword will descended upon them, but was blocked by the light. If he were any slower, that terrifying attack would have landed right on top of Futian. High above the sky, Patriarch Lin carried powerful momentum, and an absolute sword domain appeared in the space as if this was his world. A terrifying sword light shot out from his eyes as he looked at Futian and said, "No matter who you are, you must die today." There was a strong murderous intent in this voice. Patriarch Lin was determined to kill Futian, not only because of Lin Kong's death, but also because he was the one who dashed their long-awaited hopes and dreams. The other 3 cultivators levitated into the air as well. Their eyes were fixed on Blind Chen and Futian. They had released a terrifying aura, as they intend on continuing the battle from before. Futian's brows knitted slightly. The auras from all 4 cultivators exploded at the same time, covering the vast space. It seemed that he might have to use the body of Xinjiao, the great emperor, for the fight. "My friend, watch Qinyi for me. I have other business to attend to," said Blind Chen. His voice was incredibly calm, containing neither joy nor sorrow. It seemed as if he was stating a simple fact. But Yi Futian had heard the implications in those words. He began, "Sir, you don't need to." Before he could finish his sentence, Blind Chen was already high above the sky and replied, "My friend, the secret of heaven has been revealed, and I shall no longer be seen in the world. I am the agent of light, and now that the light has appeared, there is nothing in the world to detain me." Eyes open. When his voice fell, Blind Chen, who had been blinded for countless years, opened his eyes. Chapter 24-25. The Reason of Death. Chapter 24-25. The Reason of Death. The second Blind Chen opened his eyes. Countless people in the immediate area closed their eyes. The bright light pricked their eyes painfully, especially those cultivators from the four major forces. Some of them even had blood oozing from their eyes. The sight was terrifying. Yi Futian's eyes were still open. Although they hurt a bit, he continued to watch. Blind Chen seemed to have turned into the light itself. His entire body was radiant and bright. It was almost as if he was transparent. He had morphed into a phantom of the light, unleashing its endless brightness at Patriarch Lin. He drowned him with the light in an instant. At the same time, the light was also blasted at the other three cultivators. Patriarch Lin was terrified right now as a monstrous might erupted from him, and his incomparable sword will bloomed. His body soared into the sky, turning into a sword, wanting to escape through the air. Clearly, he had detected a strong sense of danger. He knew that this was no place to linger. He had heard the determination in Blind Chen's tone when he was speaking before. Blind Chen wanted to use his life to take the lives of these other four. He had never intended to stay in the world for long. Before he left, he wanted to take them with him. Patriarch Lin rushed straight into the sky, but the light flooded everything. Afterimages appeared there. But at this moment, even those afterimages had gradually become more and more elusive under the light until they too turned into countless spots of light. It was as if it had been purified by the light, reduced into nothing but dust. The purification of light. The divine method of light. The expressions of the other three cultivators were one of great fright. Rumor had it that this was the divine method created by the God of light, and could purify all things in the world. This method was particularly terrifying, and it was said that only the God of light's heir may learn of this forbidden technique. How could Blind Chen do it then? However, Blind Chen seemed to be urging this forbidden technique at the expense of the gods. No. There was an unwilling roar that came from the void. A massive face appeared above the sky. It then dissipated little by little, turning into countless spots of light. Someone as powerful as Patriarch Lin, who had survived the divine tribulation, was killed by a single thought, with nothing left. By the time the other three realized something was wrong and tried to escape, the light had already obscured the sky and covered the boundless space. Another phantom appeared above the sky, which was transformed by the shadow of Blind Chen. He seemed to have turned into a deity now, as the light was shining all over the space, and directly shrouded the three people who were fleeing. "Old diviner, we have no grievances nor grudges with you. Why resort to such fatal attacks on us?" Patriarch Lin pleaded loudly. "Old diviner, I swear I won't touch Qinyi." The patriarch of the Yu family also shouted loudly. Their voices reverberated through the boundless void, all begging for mercy in the hopes that Blind Chen would spare them of their lives. Those incomparable eyes of light were emotionless in the void. With a turning of his mind, the light that could purify all things came showering down, directly on top of the three cultivators, drowning their bodies in its brilliance. The three of them let out an angry growl to no avail. They watched their bodies disappearing little by little while their consciousness was still intact. Still, their bodies were disintegrating. The fear in their voices was palpable. It took many long years for them to cultivate to the level they were at now, and they were almost at the very top of the cultivation world. The City of Light aside, even in the lands of the Divine Prefecture and all the major worlds, they were still qualified as top cultivators. And yet, were they to die just like this? The light's purification of the divine method descended, and the three of them gradually turned transparent. Soon, these three top cultivators evaporated from the world. It seemed that in their demise, they had been turned into a part of that light. As of this moment, the top 4 cultivators from the City of Light were killed. All of them had been killed by blind Chun. Many cultivators from the City of Light were looking this way, and many more had gathered around. They look at the elusive figure in the void, an existence that was almost akin to a god. Who could have imagined that this was the blind Chun, who was walking with a cane not so long ago? The descendants of the 4 major forces felt a little surreal. It was like they were in a dream. That hunched blind man, who seemed as if he knew nothing about cultivation, had killed off their patriarchs. Previously, many of them had even suspected that blind Chun was a con man with no abilities whatsoever. Now they realized just how ridiculous that idea seemed in retrospect. However, blind Chun's form seemed to appear even more elusive at this moment. As if he was unable to turn his head, the phantom above the sky looked toward Futian and said, "My friend, don't forget what I asked of you." "Sir, there was no need to do this." Futian sighed. Blind Chun's smile was enigmatic. Then his eyes drifted in the direction where the portal of light was. His eyes were full of piety once again. Then, his figure gradually disappeared and turned into a light, dissipating little by little between heaven and earth. He got what he came for. As the emissary of light, blind Chun completed his mission and found the heir to the light. From now on, he was no longer needed in this world. Futian watched him disappear, but there was turbulence in his heart. In the last words left by blind Chun, he thought of something else. Before blind Chun, another existence was known as a prophet who had experienced the sitting death, just because he took one look at Futian. The prophet claimed that he had peered into the secrets of heaven. Although blind Chun said it was because his mission had been completed, he would no longer tarry in this world. Was this the real and only reason? If he wanted to, he could have stayed on to take care of Chun, even if he had just completed the mission. There was no need to fight the 4 major cultivators to the death. Then there was another possibility. It might be because of him. Blind Chun told him that because someone else came to him first, he had asked Chun-Yi to search for Futian. Then this whole affair could still be related to his own origin. Why was it that everyone who may know about his origin met a similar fate? Was there something more hidden behind what met the eye? Could he be overthinking the whole thing? Futian had a strong suspicion that blind Chen's death was just a piece of the puzzle. He might have made a promise, like once Futian helped Chun-Yi inherit the light, blind Chen had to go away. Teacher, Fang Siyuan and several other youngsters were a little confused. Although they were in the realm of Renhuang, they had never cultivated outside. This time, as they were following Futian to the outside world, they had been diligently observing everything around them. Futian didn't explain much, because there was no way to explain things of this nature clearly. In the meantime, Blind Tai and Hua Jiyu had come to his side. The cultivators from the 4 top forces were looking at Futian. Now that blind Chun and the 4 great patriarchs had perished together, only the cultivators from the 4 major forces were left with Futian and his party. A grievance was born today, but other than the 4 patriarchs, who could possibly touch a hair on Futian? Lin Kong's death was still fresh in their memory. Although there were still cultivators in the peak Renhuang realm among them, none of them dared to attack Futian now. Futian surveyed the crowd, and there was an insouciance in his eyes. These people no longer concerned him, since the 4 great patriarchs had already fallen. He had no problem handling the likes of the patriarchs, so the cultivators from the 4 principalities were of no interest to him at all. Are they all dead? At this moment, a strange hoarse voice came from a distance, with a degree of wickedness. Then, an extremely tyrannical aura enveloped this space, and everyone who remained expressed a look of concern. Was there still someone of this level hidden behind the scenes? The more dead the better, the voice said. Its tone was uncanny. In the next moment, a figure dressed in black appeared in the sky above. Chapter 24-26, Departure. Chapter 24-26, Departure. Who is that? Everyone looked quite surprised as their attention was captured by the figure in black that appeared. This man's aura was dark and chilling as he surveyed the crowd below. In the great bright city was another tyrannical cultivator, such as this one who, right under their noses. He looked at the portal of light and said, I have waited for this day for many years, and now it's finally here. Is this the heir of light? When he spoke, there was an icy sneer in his eyes. No one knew who he was. Obviously, this person had been keeping himself hidden before, so that he went undetected by the people of the great bright city. Nor had he ever revealed his own strength, as he lay in wait in secret. This is disastrous, the cultivators from the 4 major principalities secretly remarked to themselves. They had no idea how long this man had been inside the great bright city, as he had been lurking in the shadows until this moment. No wonder he meant to reap what benefits there were to be had after Blind Chun and the 4 patriarchs had fallen. Now who else could stop someone at this level? The cultivators of the 4 major forces had paved the way for Qin Yi, but now would Blind Chun, Qin Yi, and the others hand over everything to this man in the dark? The man in black redirected his gaze from the portal of light and swept over everyone around. He then released a horrific aura, and suddenly, a dark divine wall appeared between heaven and earth. The wall blocked out all the light and continued to expand to seal off this void. Elder, someone appeared to be quite alarmed at this juncture and said, We will leave right now and will not interfere in any matter that happens here. The inheritance of the light has nothing to do with us either. A sneer flashed across the man's face, and he said, Why don't you just sit tight for the time being? He wanted to see if Chun Yi could really inherit the light. If he were to seize it, he couldn't very well leave any witnesses. Everyone here would have to die. This man harbors a strong murderous intent. I am afraid no one will be left alive, Hua Qingqing said to Yi Futian via voice transmission. Yi Futian knew that while they were setting the 4 principalities up, this man had been waiting for his moment in the dark. He meant to seize the inheritance. Naturally, he would want to get rid of all the evidence. He had hidden his identity, so that no one knew of his existence. If he were able to intercept the inheritance of the Temple of Light, he clearly could not risk anyone knowing who he was. This person's plotting mind was terrifyingly calculating. As if he had sensed Yi Futian's gaze, the man in black looked down at Yi Futian and said, I'm a little curious about you. Who are you? I'm just an ordinary cultivator, Yi Futian replied. The elder's cultivation must not have gone unnoticed in the divine prefecture. Not many know about me. The man in black said, How can the person invited by Blind Chun be someone ordinary? You are not forthcoming with your answer. Do you need me to force it out of you? Yi Futian said, Of course, if elder wants to know, I am obligated to explain clearly and thoroughly. As soon as he said that, Yi Futian waved his hand, and suddenly a physical form appeared in front of him. When that body appeared, everyone in the surrounding area instantly felt a strong oppressive force. In the void, the man in black was looking at that body as well. Yi Futian's spiritual soul then came out of his own body and poured into that physical form. Suddenly, the divine body opened its eyes. That's not right. The face of the man in black became alarmed. Right at the moment when the divine body opened his eyes and raised his head to look at him, his eyes felt a piercing pain. He felt as if that great path was about to annihilate everything. This is a divine body, he shouted. You come from the original realm. Elder knows quite a lot. A voice came from the divine body. In the next moment, the divine body broke through the air, and a terrifying divine light appeared between heaven and earth. The man in black wore an expression of pure shock. A horrific aura of the great path descended, and countless divine lights transformed into sword lights, covering the sky and obscuring the sun. That divine body transformed into a sword that seemed to slice open the heavens. Its speed was unimaginably fast, and it cleaved open the sky in but a moment's time. Countless many looked up at the radiant sight before them. The void that was previously sealed was splitting wide open and riddled with holes. Bang! The body of Xinjia the great emperor returned to its place. Yi Futian's spiritual soul, once again, returned inside as he put it away. Looking again above the sky, the figure of the man in black gradually became more and intangible. There was a desperation in his eyes as he looked at Yi Futian, who was down below. He had always acted cautiously in his life, keeping a low profile to avoid attracting any attention to himself. He didn't expect that he would die like this today. This was Yi Futian of the original realm, and that was the physical form of none other than Xinjia, the great emperor himself. If there were any Ren Huang in the 8th realm in this world who could slay him, then it could only be the man in front of him. Why did he have to be here right now? The phantom evaporated, and the man in black disappeared from the void. His soul and spirit scattered and dispersed, and he was killed by a single sword strike. The cultivators from all 4 major forces froze when they bore witness to this scene. They looked at Yi Futian with great horror. How could they have known that he was as frightening as this? Even if Blind Chen didn't open his eyes, the 4 great patriarchs would have perished in his hands anyway. That physical form was the divine body. Many years ago, it was rumored that in the Shangqing domain, the physical form of Xinjia, the great emperor, had appeared and had been acquired by a young man named Yi Futian. Many top cultivators could not resonate with the great emperor's divine body, but that young genius talent was the only one able to do it. It was said that the young man had amazing talent. Many people had heard of this lore, especially the cultivators from the 4 top forces. After all, any relic of the great emperor was of great interest in the world, and inevitably attracted a lot of attention. The white-haired young man in front of them was that stunning and enchanting figure, Yi Futian. So it was him. No wonder Blind Chen invited him to come. It would seem that Blind Chen had already known. It was ludicrous that the 4 major forces wanted to put up a fight. In the eyes of the others, it was but a joke. Yi Futian had never considered them as viable threats. At this moment, Yi Futian turned to look in the direction of the portal of light. He did not bother to look at those cultivators. It seemed as if he didn't care whether they were there or not. This made the 4 major forces feel particularly self-conscious. It seemed that they were not worthy of being even considered by him. Yi Futian waited quietly. To him, the matter here was not worth the time or effort. He was just a passerby. When Chen Yi came out, he would be able to embark on the rest of his journey. However, the whole affair with Blind Chen still left some impressions on his mind. Who was behind this? Why did Blind Chen end his life like that? No one could give him the answer to any of this. Anyone who might have an answer was not around him at this time, or that they had fallen. This mystery looked as if it would not unravel any time soon. Time passed slowly. After a long while, a clear sound was heard. The portal of light showed some fissures, which then shattered and cracked bit by bit. From that portal of light which was breaking apart, a figure walked through. This figure was bathed in divine light. It was Chen Yi. He seemed to have undergone some transformation, and his entire temperament had changed, so that he was more like a descendant of the light. When Yi Futian saw this sight, he knew that Chen Yi had already inherited the light. He had been successful. Chen walked to Yi Futian's side without saying anything remotely like a thank you, but he remembered everything in his heart. He looked around, but did not see Blind Chen. He sighed inwardly as if he knew how things had ended. Indeed, Blind Chen had told him already. Let's go, Yi Futian said softly. Chen Yi nodded. The group then went on their way. Chapter 24-27, The Bodhi Divine Tree. Chapter 24-27, The Bodhi Divine Tree. A few months later, a flying boat was traveling through the endless void. The void was full of darkness with terrible spatial turbulences to boot. Some of these turbulences even contained the terrifying and destructive aura of the Great Path. The flying boat was like an unsteady tumbleweed, bumbling shakily through this void. It's really far, Yi Futian mumbled to himself. A spot of light was floating in front of him, as if a certain coordinate was hiding within, guiding them. It was something given to him by the teacher to guide him in his quest for the location of the Western world. Without such an item, it would not be easy to locate the Western world. It was simply impossible for any ordinary cultivator, who may perish at any moment, to travel through this endless void. Even Yi Futian himself had encountered many dangers along the way while traveling through this space. At the rear of the flying boat, there was Chin Yi, sitting cross-legged, cultivating quietly. He was constantly surrounded by the light, which illuminated the boat. "Teacher, look ahead." At this time a cry came out, and it was little Ling. She looked into the far distance, where an extraordinary shocking sight emerged in front of them. It was slowly coming into focus in all of its spectacular splendor. "I saw it," Futian nodded. His vision was much better than little Ling, so he had already seen it, but it was pretty fuzzy before. In the endless darkness and emptiness, a golden divine light appeared. A tree like a tree of the world was growing in this vast universe. This tree had been endowed with numerous branches and leaves, bright and lush. This towering divine tree was glowing with a golden divine light that seemed to be guiding their way. Futian knew that the divine tree of the world in this vast universe was really quite far away from them, which was the reason why they could see the shape of the divine tree. If they were closer, they would only see parts and not the whole. It was similar to looking up at the night sky and discerning the shape of those stars, or even the formations of stars. The same principle was at work here, because the ancient tree of the world was still so far away that it didn't appear to be very large. However, as they were getting closer, they found that it was actually a massive world. "The legend is true indeed. The Western world is a Bodhi tree," Hua Qingqing said softly. Her voice was soft and gentle, as she looked at the spectacular sight in front of her, with some emotions in her heart. "Each flower is its own world, and each leaf is a Bodhi tree, as they say." Futian whispered, "What exactly happened after the heavenly path collapsed in ancient times?" "The Bodhi tree of the world was once part of the heavenly path. After its collapse, it was scattered to one side." "It's nothing," Futian replied. Suddenly a small smile appeared on little Ling's face. The simple response from her teacher had settled her. She believed they would pull through just fine. After an unknown period of time in this storm of quicksand, Futian and his party finally got tossed out. The flying boat returned to its previous steadiness as they continued traveling in the sky. They found that they were no longer in the outer realms, but were now inside a world. Land. Looking down, land could be seen. It was populated by many cultivators with varied realms. "The Western world is here," Futian whispered, and Chani opened his eyes. "We probably just landed on a leaf of the Bodhi tree," Hua Qingqing whispered, and Futian nodded in agreement. That Bodhi divine tree was synonymous with the entire Western world, and each one of those numerous branches and leaves was a world of its own. They were swept in here by the storm of quicksand. Very possibly, this was just a leaf of the Bodhi divine tree. How come there are not many monks? Feng Xiyuan looked down and saw in the distant land. There were not many monks to be seen. Buddhism of the Western world is a supreme principality, but it is a human world after all. How can they all be cultivating Buddhism? Most of them are cultivators of other sorts. Is it possible that everyone in the divine prefecture cultivates in the same ability as Dong Huang the Great? Futian asked him in return. Feng Xiyuan scratched his head in confusion and finally replied, "I guess that is the case. However, most of the top cultivators here must cultivate in Buddhism," said Futian. They looked forward and saw the clouds seem to have turned into a gold color, and a golden celestial mountain seemed to appear in the distance, floating in midair. Then they heard a long and sustained howl. A huge demonic beast came out of the golden clouds and mist, splitting open the space with incredible speed. The clouds and mist tossed and roared as Futian and the others felt an imminent danger. Soon after, they saw a gigantic golden divine bird swooping down at them. "Golden winged rock!" Futian and the others exclaimed as they looked in front of them. They had just arrived, and there was already an attack by the divine bird. Was this some welcoming party? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.